What's up, guys? My name is Dajik Sheep, and I wanted to quick about a deck that I have a lot of fondness for, and that's very clearly Crusadia's. I have put quite a bit of thought into this deck. I've looked up as many deck profiles as I can find. Maybe not so much on the forum post side of things, but I don't tend to value a lot of what I read on forums just out of experience. But I'm going to go one by one and talk about a lot of the cards that I think either maybe get a little too much credit or don't quite get enough. But I'm going to make it as quick as possible. I tried to record this once, but I actually made a file that was too big for my phone to deal with, and I don't feel like video editing, so I'm just doing this live. First, Maximus and Draco. I don't think there's any real reason these shouldn't be played at 3. Sorry if there's noise in the background. My roommate is doing a cook. But yeah, no reason to play these at anything less than 3. Best power play, best recovery tool, and chain blocker. No reason. Crusadia Leonis. This card is definitely good, and it's especially good with Rescue Cat, but if you're not playing Rescue Cat, this is a 2 of. It's just plain and simple a 2 of. There are reasons that you should not be playing a full lineup of 3 of each, and I'll get into that once I've talked about each of them. But Leonis, generally speaking, the rewards for using its effect don't outweigh the otherwise uselessness that it kind of imbibes. Crusadia Reclusia, I think, is an undervalued card. It's a chain blocker and a problem solver, and you have other ways to spam out monsters onto the board, so you don't necessarily need it as a body or a link fodder. So I think playing it at 2 or 3 is proper. Probably 2, though. I think mathematically speaking, 2 is going to be your best option, but definitely 3 of it is not incorrect. I think playing 1 of this is absolutely incorrect because of what it does. It's not a Garnet, but it's a card that you want in your deck and you kind of want to be able to play. So playing 2 of it, I think, is kind of perfect. Crusadia Arborea. This card should be played at 3 in every fucking Crusadia deck, unless you are that strapped for space, which you really shouldn't be in a deck like this, where you're pretty fucking streamlined in what you want to do. Crusadia Arborea is your grind game for the Crusadia archetype. Now, other things can give you more of a grind game by affecting your opponent, but in terms of self-reliant grind game potential, it is these 2 cards on their own. They're so good, you should be playing 3 Arborea. Maybe if you want to play 2, if you want to play Rivalry of the Warlords, but I don't think that's really an option. I basically consider this a Crusadia monster. It functions the same, and this is a niche card. It's going to respond to specific scenarios where certain decks are very, very good. If your opponent's deck has relies on like maybe 1 or 2 extra deck monsters, and that's it. For example, Thunder Dragons, Pendulums. A lot of those decks, if you can summon out, say, a Magius or Regulex, and just drop this underneath, it's not quite a chain block, but you can activate this, and you can feel safe that you're not going to get stopped by an extra deck monster. Or if you are making an aggressive play and you want what you're about to do to connect, and you don't want, say, your opponent's Thunder Dragon Lord or whatever the fuck the card is to protect itself, you can negate that. I'm not going to talk too much about the Crusadia extra deck monsters, but I think that the people who are playing 3 of either of these are kind of selling themselves on an idea that's really never going to happen. You are going to, in a worst case scenario, play through. In the worst case scenario, you're going to play more Regulex than you are Magius. Magius relies on you using your normal summon on a Crusadia monster. In no other situation does Magius come out, because then you can't use its effect and it's kind of useless. So if you normal summon your Crusadia monster, then at that point you have to commit to the rest of the turn. There's no other, like, just kind of stopping and branching off. Once you normal summon your Crusadia monster, you're going. Your tires have hit the ground. So you're going to work up to Echo Max, and you're going to make your punch. If you don't get there, then you are going to maybe go through one more lineup. That's your last chance to get a play. So I think 2 of each is correct. No one has yet given me an adequate reason why you would play 3 of any of these. Spells. Maybe I should have gone into the spells first. Crusadia Revival is a one of. I think most people are correct on this. It's a one of. You can search it from your deck multiple ways. And yeah, maybe you'll banish it. But the thing about Revival is your game ender. Or one of them, at least. Revival says, okay, you got to 95% of game. Here's the last 5%. But Revival is not as important as getting to that 95%. If you get to that 95%, there are other things that you can do to maybe cap off that 5%. And so it's a searchable game confirmer. It doesn't generate resources. It doesn't really do much. The best thing that it does is it has a really good interaction with, Black Garden, that I really enjoy. But I'll talk about Black Garden later. Crusadia Power is very valuable. I think it's a 2 of or a none of, and the people who aren't playing it are just wrong. It's a searchable Forbidden Lance. Forbidden Lance, Forbidden Chalice, one of those two. And that's so valuable. Crusadia Power will win you games. In the long run, it will win you games. Just by saying, no, you're not stopping me, or no, I'm sorry, this is going through. I'm getting to my end game. All the chain blocking in the world cannot be as good as just saying, no, you're not stopping me. Crusadia Vanguard, yes, I think it's a good one of main deck card. It turns on Crusadia fucking Reclusia, and it turns this into one of the better stun strategies that you have, because Reclusia can pop Vanguard. I didn't realize that until like halfway into the first tournament I was playing with this deck. The fact that Reclusia can pop Vanguard in case like maybe it's the only monster that Regulex is pointing to. So you pop whatever, bring this out, pop the Vanguard, and you still have this effect live. So it means that you can do this first. And still keep him at rather powerful. I mean, 2400 is not nothing. Especially in this kind of format. So, I don't know. That's what I think about the main deck Crusadia stuff. There's not a whole lot that's really up for debate with these. Most people have kind of figured out the best ratios. I don't understand anyone who plays 3 Leonis. But I think this is more to the point. You should not be playing 15 of these. I think that the best way to go is to play 13 or 14. 13 and 14 does 2 things. It all but guarantees that you are more likely than not to have, and I'm not even talking like more than 50%, I'm talking like close to 70-75% of hands will have 2 Crusadia monsters. 2 Crusadia monsters, no matter which ones they are, mean that you will be able to get into Regulex, and so you've got your field spell search and a search for Maximus. That's what that means. It doesn't matter which 2 they are. That means you have 2 bodies and a Maximus search. That's how the deck wins. If you have 15, that does not drastically increase the consistency of having 2 in hand. What it does is increase by 10% the number of hands that will have 3 Crusadia monsters. Now, the thing about Crusadias is it's a non-essential combo-based deck, which means there are not really paths so much as many cards that kind of fill the same purpose. So the specific cards don't necessarily matter, except for the game winners, the blowout cards. But you don't want to have all of the exact same cards. You need to be able to solve problems. You need to be able to play through hand traps. You need to be able to push. And if you have, like, say, 2 Leonis and a Reclusia, that's sure not the worst thing in the world. And if you're lucky and your opponent bricked, you can get a game off of that, sure. But it's not as good as having other things. And so what you want to do is maximize the number of hands that you're going to have 2 Crusadia monsters and have ways to either interact with your opponent or prevent them from interacting with you. And so 13, if you do the math on a hypergeometric calculator, is statistically the best way to do that. 13 Crusadia monsters, dropping these two down to 2, or maybe Arborea if you don't personally value Arborea like I do. I think these two are the best ones to cut to 2. That's if you're not playing Rescue Cat. If you're playing Rescue Cat, you play 3 of this, and then you play 2 of these level 3s. But that's just the math that I've done, the way I've analyzed this. I think that's the best way to go about it. This, very easily cuttable. I really like it. I think it has niche uses, but very, very good niche uses. I think it's going to be very good if Thunder Dragons, whatever they're fucking called, become a meta contender. Let's get this out of my way so we can go back to talking about bad decks. Now, Kaijus. We'll talk about Waterfront in a sec. I think the best Kaijus to play are Thunder King and Gamciel. A lot of people just say it doesn't matter which Kaijus you play, and maybe on like the skill floor of this deck, it really doesn't. It's basically just a 0 attack monster. But if you think about it a little bit deeper, there are a couple nuances that kind of will influence how you decide to pick your Kaijus. If you're like me, you're going to say, okay, is the lowest attack Kaiju still a valuable thing? Well, what other extra deck monsters can I play? Do any of them have 2300 attack that aren't the Crusadia lineup? The answer is yes. The answer is unequivocally yes. There are other monsters you can play that make Gamciel having the lowest attack still very valuable. There are also other things that make Gamciel very valuable that I'll talk about in a sec. Thunder King, the Lightning Strike Kaiju. Not necessarily the best. It is susceptible to Invocation. It is susceptible now to Super Polymerization. But it is the biggest attack Kaiju so that you can drop it on your own board. So if you have 2 Kaijus, the best combination to have is a very high attack one and a very low attack one. That's just mathematically true. However, if it turns out that Invoked Mech Knights or whatever version of Invoked is popular becomes the best, maybe you don't want to play the light one and you don't want to give your opponent a free Makaba. Maybe you want to give them the Raijin or the Purgatrio or whatever. That's up to you, but I think that these 2 right now are the best. Slumber is a must-play in any major Kaiju package. I think the best way to play Kaijus is to have 4 Kaijus, 1 Slumber. It ensures that you're not going to brick with them. You're probably going to see one of them. In most important situations, you're going to see one, and that's all you want to see. And seeing 2 of them isn't that big of a deal. Even seeing 2 Gamciel, not that big of a deal. But you're almost never going to see 3 if you play 4 Kaijus and 1 Slumber. You can also play Kyoto Waterfront. I value Kyoto Waterfront a lot. I think in the version of this deck that I'm going to build, since I can't really afford, I don't want to drop the money on common Rescue Cats, I'm going to instead go for Kyoto Waterfront. It is a little bit more versatile because it makes Gamciel searchable as well as making its effect live. So you have a 3000 defense, 3 use Solemn Judgment that banishes. That's really good. It's not necessarily a focus of the deck, but it's definitely a handy tech option that I'm considering using. And I'm considering very heavily using that in the side, maybe even the main. I haven't decided. I'm not a fan of hedging my bets and making my deck, oh, well, if I'm forced to go first, I can do this. I don't want to go first. If I'm going first, I'm already in trouble. Why would I want to hedge my bets and say and ruin cards that could be used to enhance my consistency going second, which is what this deck wants to be doing anyway. I don't want to hedge my bets. Mech Knights are something that my friend has been pressuring me to play in this deck. He thinks that they are inherently going to do a lot of what Crusadia wants to do, and to a certain extent, he's right. Blue Sky is the best example of this. Blue Sky chain blocks, searches, puts itself on the board for free, and it's a okay attack body and with a decent booty. It's level 5, that doesn't really matter. It's a light, and that can matter. But that's Blue Sky in and of itself is good. It is good. Is it as good as other things? Well, here's my thing. Purple Nightfall does everything the Blue Sky does except chain block. It does it except chain block, and you are kind of even punished for using this as a link material because it feels bad to use this card as link material. You'd rather just keep banishing it to search, but what if you just need that body? It creates some interesting scenarios. So, and I think Indigo Eclipse, if you're playing a Mech Knight engine, you play this at 1, it's just good. But Blue Sky, what I'm considering doing is playing 3 Blue Sky, 1 Purple Nightfall, 1 red, 1 yellow. I think that is going to be the best kind of engine you can play for meshing with and having synergy with Crusadia, because Blue Sky is what gets you your search. Yeah, it relies on your opponent, but you can drop it. It relies on your opponent, but here's the thing: is it doesn't feel bad to use Blue Sky even just as a link material. It does exactly what you need it to do, and there's really not too much else to it. There's not a lot of complexity to Mech Knights, and that's why I'm not a huge fan of it. Crusadia is a very simple archetype with cards that do simple things and get you to a basic 1 punch. I think having more engines that reduce the simplicity of the deck and don't really help you solve problems. If you were just playing like 2 Blue Sky and 2 Purple Nightfall, I think you would be doing yourself a disservice, because that wouldn't help you do anything extra that the deck doesn't already do on its own. I think that's... So, like I said, what I'm going to be trying is 3 Blue Sky, 1 Purple Nightfall, 1 Indigo, 1 red, 1 yellow. Monster Reborn, it's legal, you play it. Draw 2. I said fucking draw 2. Call by the Grave is good. It serves the same function as Crusadia Power. Not much else to say. Ash is going to be coming back into popularity. Impermanence is a very popular hand trap, but there's really nothing you can do about Impermanence other than playing Red Reboot. So Call by the Grave, I think, is just a good card to play. There's another one. Hornet Drones, is it still good at 1? Yes. Is it still good enough to play at 1 even if you can't afford Engage? I think so. That's up to you. If you value having a very diverse extra deck, which I really don't in Crusadia, I think this is still... maybe you don't want to play this if you want a varied extra deck. I think this is good enough to play because it does what even the Mech Knights can't do as well. It chain blocks, it puts a body on board, and then it does it again. So I think playing these 2 in your extra deck is still very worth it. Instant Fusion has been something I've been playing with the Thousand-Eyes Strict and the Link Karibo. Maybe Millenniumizer Stick would be better. I just don't want to fucking go get it. But it helps you put a body on board for the Mech Knights and for the Crusadias, because you can just steal a monster, go into Link Karibo, you've dealt with a problem, you can go into a Crusadia monster or a Mech Knight, and you still haven't normal summoned. That's really good. I think it's good to keep that kind of thing around. Hand traps, just play the ones you have and the ones that are good. That's really not really up for discussion. Ash is going to be popular. It's whatever. There are some other good tech options that I think are floating around that people maybe aren't paying as much attention to. Cyber Dragon, I think, is going to be very, very important if Thunder Dragons, Thunderlords, whatever, become popular. Oh, yeah, it is Thunder Dragon. I fucking don't know. This card is going to be very good when those come out. It's a free body on board. It's a boss monster if you don't want to do anything else and keep the game going slow. But this is going to be something you're going to want to keep in the back of your brain. If you want to cheese some one-punch wins and you just want to like make that as much of a strategy on its own as you can, because that's what the deck was doing. I'm sorry, I'm going to shift over because my legs are cramping. There we go. I think this is going to be a very, very fun card to play, even if it doesn't really help the deck do anything that it doesn't already do. Like I said, it's a game confirmer, much like Crusadia Field Spell is. Keep forgetting its name. Oh well. But Honest, World Legacy, World Lance, I think Honest is just the better option. This is maybe a little bit more gimmicky and more fun to play, and like your opponent is not going to know what the fuck happens when you drop it. But Honest is, you've got a lot of main deck light monsters to the point where it then becomes just generically, more usable in this deck. But it's not really something to base your deck around. Gamma is very good if and only if you've got a lot of spell cards that start plays. If you've got spell cards that give you a lot of free stuff, like Pot of Desires, like Engage, stuff like that, then Gamma is going to be very good. It puts 2 bodies on board, and it negates a monster effect. So both of those things are things that Crusadia really wants to see happen. And if you just use it during your opponent's turn, fine. You negated a monster effect. That's good. Token spam is something that maybe one day when we have a lot more available link monsters that are just generically usable, these will become better. I don't think they're as good right now, but definitely not something to toss aside. Dropping a Scapegoat on your opponent's turn, if you're forced to maybe go first, is pretty damn good. And will help you get into Echo Max very quickly. And so you don't have to waste a lot of resources. Summon a Monk, if you're looking for a very, very low-grade version of this deck, it's not that bad. You really don't want to be discarding your spell cards, but if you have a lot of bad spell cards that you want to play, maybe consider Summoner Monk. I don't know. That's a lot of the main deck stuff that I've considered. There are some other like extra deck monsters that kind of matter, but not really. I talked about playing 2 of these each, I think, so I'm not going to harp on that again. There are some side deck cards that I've been mulling over that I want to quick go over, and then I will call it a day. Kinetic Puppeteer is something that I've seen floating around. It's a good card. You can send Itchy from your hand to the grave to move a monster your opponent controls, and so you can sneak it in front of your Echo Max or away from your Echo Max if you need to. Target, yeah. So it's just target a monster your opponent controls, move it to another of their main monster zones. I don't know if you can move something out of the extra deck monster zone with this, but if you can, that's very good, because that will allow you to play through extra links. I don't know how valuable that is. I don't know if that can actually be done that way. I haven't looked it up. But even if you can't, it's still a rather decent card for what Crusadia wants to do. It doesn't generate advantage, but if you play enough play starters, and every Crusadia monster, as long as you have 2 of them, is a play starter, then you're good to go. Trap Eater, I have started playing. It's the fact that it's a tuner doesn't really matter, but it's a free body on the board. It's a level 4. Maybe that comes up depending on your build. But it gets rid of back row. This deck will die to Floodgates. It will die to every single one of them. So you need to play back row removal. I don't have what was Red Reboot right now, but I mean, I would rather be playing Red Reboot than this, but it's not a bad option. If you have it lying around, maybe pull it out of that like box of bulk. Like I said, deal with back row, play 3 of this. I don't know where my other one went. Mind Control is something to consider. I'm not sure if I want to play it, but it's not the worst thing. It baits a negate from your opponent if they have it, or you take their resources, or you force a play of some kind. And that's almost always going to be good, because the whole thing with Crusadia is you want your opponent to play, but you don't want them to play too much. If they play too much, you're not going to be able to win ever. So reducing their game state, not like eliminating it or slowing it down, but reducing their game state is how Crusadia can edge in where maybe it otherwise shouldn't. I think I talked about Waterfront, but 2 terraforming, 1 waterfront, and maybe 1 or 2, probably 1 black garden in the main is, I think, going to be the way to go. Maybe play 2 terraforming in the main, probably. But Black Garden is a good card. If you don't know what it does, there are plenty of videos with people talking about it. Just go look those up. But Kyoto Waterfront is not something to sleep on. It just plain isn't. Talked about Scapegoat. I don't know why that was a stone there. Counter traps. The locals that I went to and played Crusadia for the first time, I was playing, what was it? Solemn Judgment, 2 Strike, and 2 Grand Horn of Heaven in my side deck. Because I did not want to deal with losing resources going first. I just wanted to use cards that I wasn't going to have otherwise, and that didn't really impact me in terms of advantage. If I didn't have to use my Equimax, if I didn't have to use my Vanguard, I didn't want to. And so I went for counter traps, and they did me actually pretty well. There were a couple people that forced me to go first, and the counter traps, I misplayed quite a few times, but it was never... There were situations where I would have won, and the counter traps would have won me the game had I not fucked up elsewhere. I will know after more testing if playing a more back row heavy lineup in the side deck would be worth it. I just don't know. Maybe it's better to play cards like Waterfront that synergize with things that the deck is already doing, but time will tell. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Crusadia is a deck that does something that not a lot of other decks do. I mean, if you think about like the other one-punch decks, one of the first things that comes to mind is what's the Despots? Despots do kind of the same thing. Not in exactly the same way, but with Despots, you have specific routes that your combos have to take. With Crusadias, everything is very, very generic. And you're going to have a lot of cards that kind of do the same thing. And so almost every play is functionally going to be exactly the same. It's very boring to play against because you kind of know exactly what's happening. But in that, there are subtleties to be found that if your opponent does not understand and they can't deal with those subtleties, like the ratios that you're playing or the specific tech cards, if they don't understand the possibilities that lie in those, that's where you're going to steal wins. Take a look at the regional tops that we've had lately for Crusadias. They have been either won, generally speaking, they've been won in the tech game. A lot of the techs that have been very popular have been Rescue Cat. Rescue Cat's good. It's going to shit on any Sky Striker deck, and it's going to shit on most rogue decks. But it's not going to deal with every deck. So you either have to make a meta call in your tech game, or have something that nobody's going to know how to deal with. And then you have to play it perfectly. So it's something that you're going to always have to be developing. You can't stay stale with Crusadias, or really any deck, I think. The best players are going to always be finding subtle things that change how the deck works and what the deck can do and things that the deck has access to. And I think the raw, generic qualities that each of the Crusadia monsters has, even if they're fairly well contained within their own archetype, in the deck itself, you have a lot of choices to make that maybe not everyone will understand. And I just wanted to propose some things that I haven't necessarily seen people talking about in very explicit terms. And I think I've done a good job of that with this video. You need to have a good understanding of what's going on. And I hope that this video provided that to some extent. I'm going to get going. If there's something that I didn't mention or you want to hear me talk about, please leave it down in the comments. I would love to hear what anyone has to think. I know that gets said a lot on YouTube, but I do genuinely want to hear what people have to think. I'm not a high meta player by any stretch of the imagination. Something I said may very well be wrong or incomplete, or I could have touched on something that maybe no one else has just by getting lucky. It happens. And I think more people should be open to that. I hope that at all this maybe helped someone. I will talk to y'all probably in another month. So long.